Good morning, everyone. I wanted to start with the title this morning is A Republic If You Can Keep It. I think we've all been on Facebook and social media and we're trying to find the truth. I think some of us are diligently trying to find it. Some people are trying to dissuade people from the truth, trying to get people to believe a lie, try to believe that their narrow periphery of reality is really what's true. And although to some degree I would agree that that's true, and the fact that we live in a very we live in a place today where people are under such strong delusion that the delusion appears to be the truth. Some people have accused me of not telling the truth, um, and I will admit that I'm not as thick-skinned as some people think I am. And I find it really disturbing that people will attack other people without even knowing who they are, and that's very disturbing to me, as I'm sure it is to you. Uh, Today's video really is to be able to reiterate on some of the things that I've talked about before about our Republican form of government. Most people that are alive today, they call themselves Americans, God-fearing Americans, the true Idaho conservatives, and so on. And they lack this understanding to this degree. And you could say, well, Tom, you must lack it because everybody else believes differently than you. Well, it should be pretty clear that the Democratic majority is ignorant, and if for no other reason, just because of the government that we have. People are under some sort of delusion that, oh yeah, well, the government is corrupt. You know, our founders talked about the importance of a republic if you can keep it. And what that really meant is that the people had to be educated enough on the principles of liberty to be able to defend this country against corrupt politicians and against abuse and against collusion and restricting the rights of the people and and abusing each level of government, where the judges will, you know, become the final arbiter of the rights of man, which is ridiculous, or have states sue the federal government for the federal government's overreach, which is completely ridiculous. But you know, as we look on to the elections and things, and we were looking on why people voted for, you know, certain candidates, they were also under such delusion. Well, I don't want to be able to vote for them because if I vote for them, then, you know, you know, what about this and what about that? And so people become so narrowly focused on one candidate they forget about other candidates. Now, I would argue that one of the principles of liberty in this country should have been during the election season to be able to critically think about the positions of the candidates and then compare the candidates to one another to be able to figure out which candidate is most in line with the principles of liberty and our Constitution and the understanding of our limitations of government. And what you're finding out today is, and I'll go ahead and add this because I add it all the time because it's important that I shove it down people's throat because people that don't still believe in it are going to learn to have to, um, is the element of conspiracy. Now, it's, you know, you can call it whatever you want, but the fact of the matter is that I call it what it is. And there's more than enough evidence to be able to prove that it exists, so you can be comfortable saying that as long as you understand what some of those elements are. When you take that into consideration with who you're voting for a candidate, it can drastically change the landscape. So in this particular case, somebody could say, well, I'm not going to vote for this person or that person because, you know, they don't believe in borders, or they're against cops, or they're against this, or they're against that. You know, accusations are one thing, but being able to reach out to somebody and to be able to ask the proper position on people on where they are for the office that they're running for is hugely important. You know, it's like, number one, if somebody's telling you something and they're running for, let's say, governor, right? You can look in our state constitution and you can understand the limitations of the governor. So if what he's saying is outside of that jurisdiction, of course, you can hammer him and go, well, that's just not part of your job. Well, you know, what you could also do is say, the fact that you believe this way, that is within the duties of the governor, is something I'm going to hold you accountable for to make sure that you don't do that. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to be able to make sure that I communicate with everybody else to be able to help them understand your position on this issue to hold you accountable. Today, what I'm seeing right now is people are like narrowly focused, right? They've got their candidate of choice and they're like, oh yeah, well, I'm going to go ahead and, I'm going to go ahead and vote for them. They're not looking critically at the other candidate. What they're also not considering are the conspiratorial elements that some of these other candidates are supporting. Some of these other things might be like, Senator Risch came out yesterday, and he was appointed by the Biden administration as an true Idaho Republican conservative, if that doesn't tell you enough, and as to the UN General Assembly. The UN, guys, he's actually working for the global government. So when you tell me that I don't believe in that conspiracy stuff, Tom, then why all of a sudden did Risch actually leave his state and his position to represent the UN or represent Idaho under the UN? Why did he do that? He betrayed his oath, guys. And so now what we have is the Republican establishment going completely wild. They want to be able to support Risch and Crapo and Simpson and all that. Then we get a message from of Simpson yesterday. Oh no, they're after you. It's like, are you kidding me? Are you my congressman telling me that my federal government is coming after me? But the one thing that you can say is vote for me in November. Guys, this is part of the critical thinking part, right? And I know I mentioned Congress in this, but we've got to start talking about things that are super, super important. And one of those is like this thing that keeps coming up, right? And I want to try to dispel or any rumors here. Some people are like, oh, well, Tom's going off the deep end because he's appointing candidates. I'm not appointing candidates. And if you can prove that I'm appointing candidates, then go ahead and call me out. But don't make assumptions that your body can't keep, right? I'm merely pointing out what I'm seeing. And what I'm also doing is I'm relating to people at their level, if they're willing to visit with me, to ask them critical questions so that people can better understand the positions of the candidates. There is more crap coming against Ammon Bundy, for example, still, right? People are like, oh, Tom, you're supporting whatever. You know what? Think whatever you want. But here's the point. There's a lot of stuff going on, right? A lot of people thinking and that they shouldn't be thinking, right? Because they can't critically think yet. Some people are like, we have people in the liberty movement that are going to vote for Brad Little. If you can somehow justify that you're going to vote for Brad Little as an American patriot, I would argue that you're just as bad as the Idaho establishment. Why? Because you clearly don't understand what an enemy is. You clearly don't understand the depths of what this guy supports. You clearly do not understand he's aligned himself with the Communist Party. He's aligned himself with climate change. He's aligned himself with Butch Otter as his lieutenant governor when they supported the 30,000 acres just south of the airport under Chinese jurisdiction. He's aligned himself with the non-elected bureaucrats at the federal government. He's literally aligned himself with the enemy. And you, as American patriots, think that you're going to vote for Brad Little because it's anybody but Ammon Bundy? Like I said, I'm not endorsing candidates, but what I am telling you is that you better start paying attention to the candidates that are running for office. Look at their records. Talk to people that have been in activism as long as we have, and see what we have to say, and challenge us on everything that we know, and see what kind of connections that you can come up with to try to understand better the candidate. If you've got somebody that's a globalist, they're being appointed to the UN General Assembly, they're supporting the United Nations Agenda 21, like Simpson and Risch both are, now that they've been appointed to the UN General Assembly. Let me tell you something. Nobody's going to be appointed to the UN General Assembly if they're not towing the line of the globalist narrative, period. And if you think that that's actually happening, maybe this is why I've decided to pull away from the liberty movement, because the liberty movement is no longer what it used to be to me. We used to be tight. We used to agree. We used to be more united than we are now, even though we were still independent. And now there's more backbiting, and people are like, oh, you're going to be voting for this person, or Tom, you're endorsing candidates because you shouldn't be doing this. And, you're talking about this guy in an orange jumpsuit. This guy's been arrested for trespassing, and this is all this kind of stuff. You know what? That shows to me how much you know about the law. I learned a little bit about the law. And I'm not going to tell you that I'm not an expert, because I hate when people say that. Because I'm an American patriot. I've done my job to study the Constitution. I've done my job to understand history the best I can. I certainly understand the Idaho landscape, and nobody can tell me that I can't. And then you guys are going to say, well, Tom, you're kind of angry. It's like, you know what? Are you part of reality? If you think that I'm getting mad at you, or you think that I don't have the right to be angry, you're losing your country. You're losing your state. You're losing your government at every single level. And the only thing you can do is point your finger at other people without pointing the finger back at yourself. You're expecting somebody to be able to, you're expecting a king. You're expecting somebody else to be able to toe the line without you holding them accountable. How is that consistent with the principles of liberty, ladies and gentlemen? Can you tell me that? You're going to vote for somebody for attorney general. You're going to vote for somebody for some other job. Have you ever bothered to listen to some of these people? Have you ever bothered to look at their track record? Have you ever compared it to the other person that you say that you want to vote for? Idaho is at a critical juncture right now. And I need to make sure that you guys understand a couple of things. And I don't know why this jumpsuit thing keeps coming up, but damn it, I got to tell you guys, look, if you're going to talk to me about somebody that got arrested for trespassing, maybe you need to understand a little bit more about the law. Or maybe you can correct me in error. Because on my website, I wrote a 7-part series on trespass to be able to prove that trespass can't apply to public property. So, in that instance alone, if somebody is arrested in a public area for trespassing under the conditions I've outlined in the articles in my website, is it possible? And the answer is no. If the answer is no, and this person was guilty of trespassing, one could think maybe that there was a little bit of judicial activism involved in this. Maybe there was a little bit of political motivation to this. How is it that sitting in your chair or doing some of the things that you're doing and you're getting arrested, or better yet, wanting to have a rally in the city and being denied to do so because the communist mayor that we all know is a communist has come out and said, we don't want his people here? What that should tell you is she wants her kind of people there. And the other thing that should be gravely concerning to you is if you have a mayor of a city that actually denies somebody the ability to be in the city or to be able to have a permit in the city, is that not politically motivated? Can you not now be banned from being in the city of Boise? Can I not be banned from being in Canyon County where I live? Or can I be banned from somewhere else? If this is okay for the average American to be able to say, well, I'm going to vote for Brad Little. I'm going to go ahead and vote for a communist sympathizer, a globalist. I'm going to vote for somebody that insulates himself against the people, because I certainly don't want somebody that stands next to me at a rally because he was in an orange jumpsuit. It's absolutely asinine. Absolutely asinine. When you understand how the media works, you understand media collusion, you understand exactly what they're trying to do to maintain their narrative. How is it that you're not a useful idiot for the deep state? How is it that you're not a useful idiot for the furtherance of the establishment as an American Idaho patriot? I would strongly urge you to consider exactly what the hell you're doing. How much do you know? And should you even be opening your mouth if you're that freaking ignorant? If you're that ignorant of these basic things, then you probably shouldn't even be talking about it, because you're not equipped with the knowledge necessary to be able to see things for what they are. Period. Some of the principles that are really important are these. When you look at a candidate, do they expand government or do they contract government? Do they spend your money? Do they take the money from you and give it to somebody else? On those two elements alone, what candidate would you support? Brad Little Now we've got $300 million to education. Where do you think that money comes from? Where do you think all of this money comes from? They're using you to take your tax money away from you to be able to give it to special interests. Special interest groups that do the bidding for these other people, and special interests that are lining the pockets for themselves. So when I heard about my fellow people that are American patriots that are voting for Brad Little, let me tell you something. If you're not aware of truly who he is and who the history of him is, the Gem State Patriot did multiple articles on the connection of the Idaho Deep State. And I call it the transgenerational deep state. You've got the Rishes, and you've got the Simpsons, and you've got the Littles, and you've got the Otters, and you've got all of these people. What do you think is happening in America? Liberty is rising. People are finally awake that there's something going on. But many of them do not understand. And some of them that understand might understand part of it, but they don't understand the necessary depths of it. When you look at this global element, you can think, oh, that Tom, he's so full of conspiracy. You just wait. You just wait. Because the whole goal, even according to the document of the State Department back in 1963, I think, it was a document called Freedom from War, they're talking about disarming you. Well, who's going to disarm you? Are you not aware of that? I wouldn't expect you would be. But the point is, there are already mechanisms in place to be able to subvert your freedom, to be able to destroy everything that you know and hold dear about what you know about America or about what you think about America. And there are certain people that are trying to be able to elevate themselves to Idaho's office, and they're fighting against their own people because their own people don't trust them. Their own people are so busy wanting to continue to be abused again for one more election. Will Brad Little take more money for education? Of course he will. Will he lock us down? I don't know, but there's no way that there's no way if he wants to that we're going to stop him. And the reason why we're not going to stop him is because we're too busy fighting with each other. We're too busy fighting against each other because we don't know who the enemy is. We couldn't define the enemy. We don't know who the enemy is. We're too tolerant and diverse, even though that we say that we're not brainwashed. And we're like, oh, well, Brad Little's not the enemy. It's like, well, the enemy is some sort of unknown, unfaced entity. Maybe it's George Soros, right? Everybody's on the George Soros train right now. Well, George Soros operates behind the scenes a lot of times, and he helps collapse countries. He helps collapse economies. Do you think a man like that is going to do that himself? No. He's got useful idiots that work for him that do that. As these states become more globalized, you have to understand there are mechanisms in play that are being orchestrated from on high at a local level to bring about their end game. And the end game is the Great Reset. The end game is population control. The end game is famine. The end game is no water. The end game is having you drive electric cars with fruity names like Leaf, not Chargers or Mustangs. God forbid that. We don't have males with any testicular fortitude. So why would we have anything aggressive in our language? All of these things are heavily in play right now. And if you are so narrow-minded that the only thing that you can see is anybody but Ammon Bundy, I would strongly encourage you to start expanding your periphery and start understanding the positions of other candidates and start discussing what those are. The other thing to consider, too, is if you have any testicular fortitude in you at all, you're going to want a fighter. You're going to want somebody that fights. You're going to want somebody that will adhere to good counsel. You're going to want somebody that will fight for you. You don't want somebody that's going to fight for Fauci. You don't want somebody that's going to fight for the communists. You don't want to fight for somebody that's going to support the UN agenda. You are going to fight for somebody local
if you truly care about Idaho or America. Because if you don't fight, you've lost. You've absolutely lost. And the one thing I want to let you know is time is ticking. Things are worse today than they were yesterday. And they were far worse yesterday than they were the day before yesterday. And yet people think that being engaged in activism as if somehow it's a derogatory term, which is ridiculous to me, and you think it's an option that somehow, well, maybe I won't be personally involved yet or whatever, and I'm just going to wait till I'm personally involved. I'm going to wait till the IRS comes to my door. I'm going to wait till the FBI comes to my door. I'm going to go ahead and wait till they remove you from your home and put immigrants in your home instead. I'm just going to go ahead and wait till I'm personally affected. I'm going to wait for them to come take my guns. You know what? I got news for you. If you are absolutely that compartmentalized in your thinking and you're going to wait that long, we've already lost. I have seen more people that have given up. God, I swear, you guys, forgive my aggression here, but I swear I'd like to slap people upside the head when they act like that. Oh, it's in the Bible. Oh, there's nothing we can do. Oh, Tom, when you talk about things, it just seems so big. It's like, you know why it seems so big? Because there's so few of us that are doing anything about it. It's like, oh, well, what are we supposed to do? Well, I vote and I watch Fox News. It's like, oh, that's really good because the enemy really cares about what you know more than what you do about it. People are whiners, kind of like I sound right now, right? And they're complainers, right? They don't want to do anything. They think their patriotic duty is going to dinners. Well, I just listened to this person speak at dinner. It's like, okay, let's look at that for a minute. What did that person say? Well, I think the education has CRT in it, and I can't find it, but I want to make sure that I can find it. And, we've got all these other issues that are going on. It's like, at the end of these speeches, have they themselves offered action items for the listeners? Or has any of the listeners that have attended any of these rallies called these guys out saying, what can we do? Furthermore, when you have people that say, what can we do? Is there a mechanism in place to hold people accountable? As if things aren't bad enough already, we've got people that say they'll step up. Oh, I'm going to step up and I'm going to help you, Tom. But you know what? When I call on them to hold them accountable, they're nowhere to be found. And I know many of you other liberty leaders are focusing on the same thing. You're like, dude, I've got all these people that said they want to help me. It's like I remember somebody telling me, well, I got 3,000 people on an email list. Big deal. How many of them are doing anything? What you find out is there's only 5, 10, 30. We are so disjointed and we're so screwed up. And what I'm trying to do, although what it may sound like is different, and that's really not my intent if you're getting that, is to be able to try to say, look at how divided we are. Look at how divided we are. Look at how divisive we are. Look at how emotional we are, right? Look at how emotional we are about this issue. And why can't we all just get along? I get that a lot. You can only get along with people that are willing to be able to go listening through a video like this. And if they disagree, challenging me on where I'm wrong. And so I have to come out and apologize and restructure what I'm saying and all that. It's the whole iron sharpening iron mentality, right? But if we're so busy judging other people, and I hate that because I don't mind being judged, but if we're so busy judging other people without judging ourselves first, which is also biblical, what are we doing? Have we not become more of the problem than we've become of the solution? And so I would strongly encourage you guys to reach out to people that have been involved in a while. Hell, reach out to me. I don't care. If I can help offer a perspective that will help people go, you know what? I was thinking this, but then Tom said this, and I don't know if I agree with him. So I'm going to call him and ask him. Call me and ask me. If somebody says something that you don't agree with, ask them what they mean before you assume what they mean. Yesterday, I'm arguing with somebody that's poking me like the bear, saying, "Well, why would you vote for that guy?" First of all, I'm not endorsing a candidate. Second of all, He said something like, oh, well, states elect the governor. I'm like, first of all, you're kind of a moron, but I need to understand what you're really saying. Are you saying that you really believe that states vote for governors? Because states don't. And I wouldn't even say that the people do yet, because we have such pathetic voting records, because people think that it's too late, which is already a sign of giving up. If the people would vote for the governor and they did it with some sort of educational foundation behind them and an understanding of this wider periphery that some of these people are under, we would make much better choices. And I think that we would align with each other much better if we openly discussed what these positions of these candidates are. I invited Brad Little to my house on the radio. Do you think he's going to come? No. He can barely even show up in public. Do you think if I asked Eamon Bundy, he'd show up to my house? I'll bet dollars to donuts he would. Janice McGeehan? Sure. I'll bet she would have shown up to my house too. Most of these other candidates, I'm sure they totally would. So, if somebody's going to be that willing to show up to my house, and they know that I'm kind of a rabble rouser, right? He's kind of that angry guy on Facebook. What does that say? Am I part of the deep state now? Do these people trust me? Are they willing to be able to do that? I would probably suggest, because I've only been doing this almost 20 years, that maybe they understand enough about me to be able to understand how I tick. And it doesn't matter if you're a friend of mine or you're not a friend of mine. If you take contrary positions to mine, or positions that are contrary to our founding fathers, I'm not voting for you. Does the average American separate themselves from who they like personally, like I'm going to have a beer with this guy, or tea or Coke or whatever? Or do we vote for somebody because we grew up with them? And I know that we rehash this all the time. People are like, oh, well, I don't do that. It's like, bull. Bull. We are all brainwashed to some degree. It's important that we remain